Hi, how are you?
I'm great, sir. How are you?
I'm good. How do I say your name? Is it Sai?
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Yeah,
firstly, thank you. Thank you very much for giving me opportunity to interview you for my YouTube channel and podcast.
sure. Happy to. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I thought to tell about you and the work that you are doing to my audience.
I'm sorry, what's that?
I thought to tell about you and the work that you are doing to my audience.
What am I doing?
Yeah, your work.
Oh, yeah, sure. So I work as a product manager on the Azure Cosmos DB team. I've been with Microsoft for over 20 years now. I started initially back in February of 2000 and have done lots of different roles. I've worked in their services division. I've done business development. I spent a fair number of years doing marketing and evangelism. And then I've been doing product management now for, I don't know, 6 years or so, maybe more than that, maybe 7 years now. So a fair chunk of it. Um, Currently on the Cosmos DB team, I pretty much oversee a lot of our outbound or go-to-market types of stuff. Things like developer relations, social media. I work closely with our marketing folks. Work closely with people who are focused on like partners and our field, our sales field. Um, And then I still manage some features as well. I'm a feature owner for our management control plane. Like everything in Azure, it has what's called a resource provider that provides kind of a control plane to manage the resource, update it, delete it, that sort of thing. So every service in Azure has this control plane, this management API. So I'm a feature PM for that. That doesn't take a whole lot of time. A lot of the feature owners or developers on the team write to that management API when they need to interact with it. But I provide, and my team kind of provides kind of like a governance over that. And then, of course, there's all these downstream clients for that, like PowerShell and Azure CLI, things like ARM templates and Bicep, even things like Terraform. All of those things interact with and talk to our management API. So those are all things that I kind of keep an eye on.
So, understanding Azure services which are related to machine, understanding human beings, which one is easy for you?
Understanding humans or understanding machines?
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit of both. To do, I mean, I'm in this field because I love computers and I love coding. I mean, I still like to write code, even if it's not, um, mission critical apps and services. I'm still writing samples and demos and other things to help users and customers learn how to use our services. But I still love like spending all day in like VS Code or Visual Studio or whatever editor I'm in and just writing code. That's fun. But I love the human aspect of it as well. I think I was drawn to things like doing evangelism because as much as I love writing software, I love talking about writing software even more. And so that's kind of the fun human element is, and one of the things I really love about the work I do is I love getting people really excited about what we're building. And it's why I work on this team. Um, Distributed NoSQL databases is really a cool, fun technology and an interesting area, particularly these days with cloud becoming ubiquitous and people wanting to migrate or take advantage of what the cloud provides you, which is, kind of that self-service for provisioning and managing compute and storage and networking and all that stuff, and databases, of course. You can build at much greater scale, obviously, when you have the ability to be able to provision 10 to hundreds of thousands of VMs or databases or whatever it is, and do that in data centers all over the planet. It's really, you've now got the ability to build the global scale to your applications. And a database like Cosmos, it's built for that. I mean, that's one of the key and cool aspects of it is it can natively replicate to whatever region users want within our cloud, within Azure. So that's really a kind of a cool thing about it.
So how these Azure services created impact on mankind?
How has Azure services impacted mankind? That's a huge question. I can say that out of at least what I'm familiar with, and very timely as well, is there are lots of new services being built on Azure to help with things like COVID testing. We've got a big customer, and I'm one of their exec sponsors for at least for Cosmos that provides rapid testing and results for users, at least all over North America, and actually I think globally now. They're not expanding that to make that global, right? There are lots of others that are building healthcare and patient management systems using things like Azure and things like just the cloud, or things like Cosmos, which is well suited for managing healthcare or patient records. There are, I mean, in so many different aspects, in so many different ways, whether users are building services or applications to monitor our environment, to monitor our world, or to help keep people safe, whether it's through law enforcement or other types of scenarios, or in just security, or if it's helping people to manage their finances, or to manage their lives better. Or maybe it's helping them in retail scenarios. That's a very common scenario for databases like Cosmos, is make it easy for me to order stuff and have it shipped to me. Particularly, again, also in times of COVID, when I don't want to walk into a grocery store with 100 or 200 or 300 people who, I may be exposing myself. So allowing me to be able to purchase the goods and services I need and do it safely from my own home and have it just dropped off at my door. That type of thing has exploded, I would say, within the last couple of years. Really, the whole world has changed in terms of providing availability and access to services that before you had to go out in person and do. Now everything you can do, nearly everything online, right, from your browser. So the cloud makes that possible, right? You can build and manage it at scale, much greater scale than you could otherwise. So that's not Azure specific. That's just the cloud itself that does that.
So you remember you as a system engineer?
Do I remember when I was a system engineer?
Yeah.
Oh, sure. I mean, before Microsoft, I was, building software. I was a software engineer. I started right after college, right after university. I never went to school to write software. I went to school to learn finance. My goal was to go into banking and currency trading after I finished university. I unfortunately graduated at a point in history where there was a major global recession going on, and nobody was hiring. Anybody that was coming out of university was looking for a job or whatever. My first job out of university was not with a bank, but working as a cook at a golf resort, making food, and because it's the only other thing I knew how to do. I worked as a cook going to university to help pay bills. So I went back to the only other thing I knew how to do that I could make money at, which is flipping burgers or making food or whatever. It wasn't long though until the people that ran the place realized that I had a degree in finance and could do things like accounting or whatever. So they asked me if I wanted to go work in their accounting department, and I said, yeah, sure. It's probably less greasy than what I'm doing today, so sure, I'll give that a try. So I went and did accounting, and kind of realized I didn't like doing accounting very much. But at that time, one of my coworkers gave me a copy of this new product called Microsoft Access that was still in beta, and gave it to me on a bunch of floppy disks that she had copied from, so I don't know where she got it, whatever. But it was like a beta copy of pre-release version of Access 1.0. And I took it and played with it, and in just a few months, I wrote a little Access app that did my entire job for me. And then realized that was fun. I enjoyed doing that much more than I enjoyed my job, what I was doing. So I gave them the app I wrote and said, all right, I'll see you. I'm quitting. I'm going to go build apps using Access or just start writing apps. So that's what I did. And then from there, I learned Visual Basic, which was that Visual Basic 3.0, 16-bit at the time, right? I mean, back when I was doing this, the OS I was using was Windows 3.1.1 and Windows for Workgroups. That was the time frame. So this was very early 90s. So I learned Visual Basic from there, things like Fox Pro, Power Builder. This is all stuff that I don't even think exists anymore. SQL Server, I don't think existed. I think my first big relational database other than Access was Sybase. There were other databases I used as well, like Btrieve. I don't even think that exists anymore, but that was kind of an ISAM database that they then built like relational engine on top of it. But it was to get data in this type of database, you needed like index and offsets in bytes to go get your data out of this thing. Very low level, but super fast. I also learned C at the time. I believe Btrieve only had like a C driver. So that was the only way I could access it or use it. So that was, I learned C. I learned C++, Java as well back in those days. I did some PHP. J++, that was an interesting one. So that was kind of towards the middle and 90s. But that was kind of the predecessor to what ended up becoming C#. And I worked for a company that was doing work in Java, and we were working on the Windows platform, and then we discovered J++, and I was like, wow, this is amazing, because it gave you full access to the whole Win32 platform, and did it in a way that wasn't kind of hokey like the way, like in Visual Basic back in those days, VB kind of hid and abstracted away everything. So if you wanted to get at the underlying OS, you had to do a lot of really weird, unnatural things. J++ made that much simpler, which was very cool. And then anyway, Microsoft ended up getting sued, so they ended up killing J++. You could read about it in the Internet Archives. Many stories have been written about all that whole saga. Anyway, yeah, so kind of during my time still in the 90s before Microsoft, I worked for like an accounting ISV that created accounting software. I think they're not still around. I think they got acquired. But my time before Microsoft, I spent working at e-commerce startups like .coms. And this was back in the late 90s before the first .com boom and bust. Working on building e-commerce applications and services for people. We were building them in classic ASP in those days, running on Windows. There was no C#, no .NET. We were using SQL Server. We were using things like MSMQ to do all of our message processing. In fact, that was all the stuff I owned was all the messaging-based stuff. So e-commerce applications have lots of different states, if you will, right? Like when you push purchase for something on on a website, lots of different things have to happen after that. It's kind of what you see now in kind of your message-based microservices, where you you click purchase, and then a HTTP message gets sent to a REST endpoint that said, hey, here's an order. And then there's something listening there that says, I got a new order. So I need to go do a bunch of different stuff. Like I got to send a thank you email. I need to run this guy's credit card and make sure that I can get an auth code for that. I need to go and send notifications to our warehouse to go and pick and pack and ship that stuff. And then if anything bad happens along the way, like say the credit card gets declined, I need to do something there. I need to stop the order from getting shipped. I need to maybe send them an email and say, hey, your card is no good. Give me another card or whatever. All of those are kind of event driven, if you will, right? And we didn't have any of the things that you have today, like with things like Azure Functions or AWS Lambda or any of those things where you had like these kind of serverless compute sitting there and you could listen to messages and you could bind to services and trigger some action to be taken. There was no like logic apps or any of that other stuff. It was all manually written. And that's a lot of what I focused on, was building kind of that infrastructure and all of the little services that would send messages back and forth. And then you had to maintain state for all those things, so that you knew at any point along the way where an order was and what needed to happen next. Anyway, that was the stuff I was working on. And then Microsoft hired me, and I went from building e-commerce backends to working on mobile devices. And this was our first generation of mobile devices, Windows Mobile. Back then, it was a Windows CE operating system, which is no longer around. But it was cool. There was a lot of neat things about it. I mean, it was a very slimmed, like no frills kind of OS, obviously designed for a device. You had kind of cool things like this platform builder where you could basically image a device with its OS and all the other stuff that you wanted on the phone or the device. That was a cool little feature. You had very basic tools. You had an embedded Visual C that you could use to write apps for Windows CE. They even had an embedded Visual Basic, which was very slow, but was functional. And you could build, that was our first generation. Like we had our Pocket PC platform that was all built on the Windows CE platform, the Windows Mobile platform. Then we had our first smartphones back then, and then again, kind of there's lots of ink has been written about that era as well. Apple came on the scene with their iPhone and their app marketplace and kind of changed everything overnight, right? We were, we were on a lot of different devices and making some progress with mobile operators at the time, and then Apple just kind of came in and disrupted that whole space with their iPhone platform, and kind of the rest is history, right? So, although I don't have an iPhone, but I have an Android device. So,
what was you as a consultant?
I'm sorry, what's that again?
You worked as a consultant.
So I joined Microsoft. I joined in their services division, as a consultant. And that's where I was working on mobile devices, was in that division. I worked in the group I worked in was a bit unique in that most MCS groups in Microsoft are located kind of all over the world in different offices, and work directly with customers. This one was based in Redmond, and it was unique in that we did work on customer projects, but a lot of it was working on stuff for the product teams. And so there was a fair amount of that. A lot of us were ring-fenced resources, they call us, which means that basically somebody bought a bunch of our billable hours, and then we basically just work for them whatever they need. Basically, we go and build it. So there was that kind of aspect to it. What else did I work on back then? I worked on one of the very first things I worked on was um, when Windows XP was released. They had this thing called MSN Messenger within there, or it's kind of like the old Windows Messenger, but it was MSN branded. And then they offered a way to do kind of almost like a marketplace thing where you could do custom tabs in there and you could buy other stuff, purchase stuff. Like there was the one thing I worked on was there was a music service. I can't remember. It was called For Your Entertainment, or FYE. I think they were based out of New York. And you could log into MSN Messenger and then go and buy music from these folks directly or out of this MSN Messenger tab. And that was one of the things I worked on, and it shipped with Windows XP, which was the very first, I guess, OS I shipped something on in there. So that was an interesting thing I worked on. I also worked on our very first tablet PC platform as well. I did some, I guess the only thing interesting there is I created a custom ActiveX control that allowed you to do inking on a web page on a tablet PC. That was something interesting I did in there. I built a little internal expensing application for Windows Phone. Actually, not Windows Phone, Windows Mobile. That was the older platform on CE. That never was released. It was just used internally by Microsoft employees, but everybody really enjoyed that thing because a lot of people at Microsoft travel for business or whatever, and they needed a way. Having a way to capture expenses, out-of-pocket expenses, was always greatly appreciated by people who spent their life on the road. And that's, Microsoft is a big company of a lot of people who at least before COVID used to travel quite a bit. Not so much these days.
So you worked as a senior software engineer at Avicor Software.
Yeah, that was the accounting. Those guys they were a mid-market ERP vendor, and I worked on an accounting package for them. I believe they're owned by Sage Software now, if I'm not mistaken. So they're still around in some way, shape, or form. Yeah, that was an interesting time working for them. I did a bunch of different stuff when I worked for them. So one of the interesting things about ERP applications is they're built to be customizable, right? And you need a way to be able to make that very seamless. So you want to build a platform where you can have like metadata kind of drive the experience. Like you're always going to ship kind of a basic experience for a user in an ERP package, but you need a way to be able to customize that with either additional fields you want to store in a database, additional business logic you want to have operate, additional inputs and other UI elements that appear on your screen. One of the things I worked on back then was creating a kind of a metadata-driven customization platform, if you will, for that software. I don't think it ever, and I left before it may have made it to market, but it was one of those things that I created and spent some time on there, where you kind of had a database that contained all of the customization elements, like whether it was custom UI elements and kind of where the position and size of those things were, what type of control was it a text box, was it a drop down, was it a radio button, whatever. You need some metadata to be able to drive what that thing looked like so you could render it on a screen. You needed some business logic to say, okay, what happens to the data that's input into this thing when a user says save on a screen. So you needed a way to be able to capture the business logic for that. And then, of course, you needed to be able to route it in a way into a database so that it gets persisted. So that was one of the things I wrote. Was one of those a platform like that was kind of a whole metadata-driven customization platform for ERPs. Like I said, I don't know if it made it to market or not. I left before I think they would have done anything with that. I did some other work as well to help, like a lot of ERP companies, they kind of grow via acquisition. So they buy other smaller competitors and then they integrate their offerings together. I worked on a team that helped to integrate those things together. They're my background in kind of message-based integration, message queuing came in handy because a lot of that integration was done via message queuing. So in those days, there was no such thing as like BizTalk, where you had things like could write encoders and decoders for you. You could just select message formats and then just boom, it would be done for you. In those days, we wrote our own encoders and decoders, and back then, XML was all the rage. Everybody thought, oh, everything should be in XML so that you can describe it and all that stuff. Of course, XML was insanely heavy and would bloat pretty much anything you would put through it. There's better formats today like JSON, which is far more concise, if you will. But yeah, we wrote our own encoders and decoders to process message. And then, of course, you needed a way to process the messages as well, and then dead letter queue and process those. So all that stuff was handwritten back in the day. Now you've got things like MSM, or not MSMQ, like BizTalk server, things like Service Bus. You've got all these event grid or event hubs. You've got all these different message services that provide you a lot of all of that stuff out of the box, if you will. So it's you don't spend as much time doing the low level plumbing that we had to do back 20 plus 30 years ago. Yeah.
Okay. So, and also you worked as a senior software engineer at buy.com.
Yeah, that was my e-commerce time. Prior to that, I worked at a smaller e-commerce startup called was it Buy Golf. I think the plan was all along is that we would get purchased or acquired by the buy.com folks. That was a lot of fun, and my first kind of foray into doing e-commerce. All of our all of our servers sat on metal racks inside our office, essentially. The office itself was located in a little beach town called Laguna Beach, which is where I used to live before Microsoft hired me. And it was on like the second floor of like a very tiny little strip mall. I think there was like a nail salon downstairs, like a hair place, and like a little accounting or accountant office or whatever. It had the nice thing is it had an awesome ocean view from my window. So on the second floor, you could turn around, you could see the ocean right there, which was cool. It also had a shower downstairs, like a shower head just came out of the side of the building. So if you wanted to go into the ocean and swim or surf at lunchtime, you could go do that and then just hop out, and then you're only steps away from the building, just shower off and go right back to work. So that was fun. Definitely enjoyable for my time in my 20s when I was still young and could go and do crazy stuff like that and then just go right back to work. So good stuff. I don't think I would do that today. I'd like to, but I don't think I would. So I don't get the time to go do that.
So what are your memories as a senior consultant at Microsoft?
Yeah, it was working on all of those early platforms that are no longer there, whether it's the Windows mobile platform or our first tablet PC platform. That was, those were my memories of the consulting days back then. Did a fair amount of traveling as well. That was kind of, when I came to Microsoft, the first time I had really gotten the opportunity to really travel anywhere outside of, say, North America. Like, I'd been to like Mexico and Canada and of course the US, but I'd never been anywhere overseas. I got, a chance to go to Japan, Korea, Australia. Most of the travel was in Asia, and during those early years at Microsoft. That was really eye-opening to me, and it kind of instilled a travel bug into me that's still, like, I'm just chomping at the bit for like travel to open up again, because I really enjoy it. Uh, well, I enjoy parts of it. Like I don't like sitting in an airport crammed with a bunch of people. I also don't like heavy. I don't like it when the plane shakes heavily like that, right? I don't like lots of turbulence. That makes me uncomfortable. But I love going and seeing new places, and trying new food and trying new things and seeing new things and meeting new people. I love talking to customers one on one. I think it goes back to that human element again, where I love talking to and engaging directly with people and getting them excited about what we're building and what we're doing. And I genuinely want to help people and make them successful. That's been my goal the entire time I've been in software. And it's what motivated me to go into it in the first place is after I wrote that very first little Access app back in 1992 or something it was a long time ago. I realized that I could change people's lives by writing software. And that motivated me a great deal then and now, is the ability for software to change people's lives. It's absolutely, it motivates me to this day, I'll say. And nothing could be more true in the power we have as engineers, developers, to take, silicon and bits and change people's lives, whether it's making their work easier, or I don't know, anything else that could potentially impact them. It's for me a big, huge motivator, and one of the reasons why I love what I do.
So, what is your understanding about product management? You as a senior product manager, Azure. So, what is your understanding about the product?
About how to do product management?
Yeah.
I mean, it fundamentally goes back to what I was just saying, which is what is it that, I mean, the whole purpose of doing product management is you go and you build something that people want, right? And that starts with understanding what do they need. What is it you can build that they will want and pay you for, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you want to work on something that people will pay you money for, because it pays your salary and it keeps the lights on and all the other stuff. But that's kind of at the fundamental heart of it is understanding that very basic question, which is what do people need? What do people want? And then everything in a way kind of flows from that. Understanding those things. How many people want the thing? How much are they willing to pay for it? What other details or things do they need to do? Other pieces that fall into place around that is how do I reduce the friction for customers to both find me, so raising awareness, to try me, right? So just getting their hands on it, and then convert, like to activate and become a paying customer, to go from that trial where I'm just trying something to where, okay, I like what you've got, I want to use it, now I want to pay you for it. That in itself, right there, is kind of the whole customer journey in a nutshell, and it's what the product manager owns, from kind of that whole product life cycle perspective. There are other elements to that as well in terms of that customer journey, like not everybody that finds you and tries you converts, or maybe they do buy and then they churn or they leave. Understanding why did that customer leave, or why are customers leaving, is another big kind of aspect of product management. It's that whole kind of understanding the customer retention, and doing analysis around that, right? There were looking at the data that customers provide when they sign up and use your product and pay you for it and then leave, is invaluable, right? Like, why are customers leaving? There may be something about the product that they don't like, and it may be something they don't know until they get down the road with you. So a fair amount of doing product management is data science, is analyzing usage data, dividing that into cohorts to understand, okay, why did these customers churn, or why did they leave us? What is unique about them, or not unique, but what is what is the same about that cohort of customers, and why they left, and then using that data to improve the product, right? That's also kind of that whole understanding, and why you want to look at that data is it aligns with, hey, we want to build something useful. So if we're building something and some segment of customers don't find it useful, then why is that? And then taking action upon that to go and fix the product or update or change the product in a way to make it so that it is useful for them.
And you working on web platform and tools.
Yeah, that
How
was so I worked on the Microsoft Web Platform and tools for, oh, that was, I don't remember how many years that was. It eventually uh, led to my joining the Azure team. So back when this was in the days I was doing marketing and evangelism. Um, I had worked on our Maps platform. It was called Virtual Earth back in those days. It's Bing Maps fundamentally now, and there's like a dev platform that you can go and build geospatial applications and use Bing Maps to render those things. There's like a JavaScript API. I believe it's still there. And I worked on that product for, it was only about a year, and then went to go work on our web platform and tools team. Those days, that was really centered around things like IIS, which was our web server, Internet Information Services, which ran on Windows Server. There were also the ASP.NET at the time was also part of that team, web platform and tools. We had some free dev tools that were part of that at the time. Silverlight was part of that team as well. And what else? There was and then another tool we had made called Web Matrix, which we launched back then. That was fun. A lot of the stuff I was focused on during those years was focusing on open source communities. We wanted to try and convince developers building on open source web platforms to use Windows and IIS to host their web applications. Back in those days, and even still true today, like LampStack was kind of the big platform for hosting web applications. It's the Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. There's other flavors of that, of course, today, and things like Nginx has actually also grown quite a bit from the days when Apache kind of dominated all of that. But Linux is still obviously the huge underpinning for all of that hosting. And there were specific communities around kind of that whole LAMP stack that we wanted to kind of engage with. The big one was the WordPress community. And what we did is we looked at kind of web server share back in those days to say, who are the big drivers of usage for LAMP stack? And WordPress was like the 800-pound gorilla. Like it seems like millions and millions and millions of websites built on WordPress. And a lot of them were self-hosted. Many of them were, hosted by like WordPress.com. And many others were just building custom WordPress sites and hosting those on LampStack. So we tried for a number of years to reach out to that community, to engage them, to contribute to them, to try and make running things like WordPress easier on Windows and IIS. We contributed to PHP itself in making sure that it ran, compiled, and was speedy on Windows. So there were many years of Microsoft contributing directly to the PHP core, and I believe we still do. I'm not quite sure, but I think we do. And then other communities as well that we reached out to and engaged with. Drupal was another kind of large CMS community that ran on LampStack. A few others as well. So that was my time during those years, was really focused on a lot of and then there's a Python community as well. We focused on them to some extent as well, and Django. So anyway, those years I was very focused on kind of the open source web community. And part of that was creating a way one of the things that we created that was unique about those years is we created an application catalog where out of Windows and IIS, users could provision and deploy a PHP site, whether it was a WordPress or a Drupal or Moodle or Django or other open source web frameworks onto Windows and IIS and do it with a single click, or at least nearly a single click. So we had this web application gallery that we had created, and we would work with contributors from each of these communities to create these packages that they would then upload and then would be registered into our catalog. And then users could go and then deploy these things. We created a really cool tool, still used today, called this web platform installer, where you could go and install this on your Windows IIS box. And then it would do things like install web frameworks like PHP, .NET, Python, whatever web framework you wanted. It would install tools on there. It would install extensions for IIS. It would install databases like MySQL and others on there, and would essentially kind of be like the name implies, it's a platform installation tool. So it preps and makes the web server, that server machine, into a proper web server, so that you can then install things like a CMS on top of it, like a WordPress or a Drupal or whatever like that. And so that was one of the things that was really interesting that came out of those years, was this web platform installer, and a way to basically do kind of package and application management for an entire machine and do it in a very easy to manage way, right? So all the dependencies, when you ran something like a WordPress install, we would know all the stuff you needed to install. Like you needed to install PHP, you needed to install MySQL, you needed to install all this other stuff. And then it would essentially reduce all of the friction necessary to do that. So that was interesting technology at the time. We also created this IDE called WebMatrix, which took that kind of a step further. So you had now a way to do the client side development of that. So it would essentially, WebMatrix was there it was kind of the flip side of the web platform installer, where you were prepping a server machine to host these applications. This provided the way to do the development on your client machine. And then once you were done and had customized and prepared your WordPress or Drupal or whatever it was you were building, we then had a way to be able to easily publish that onto a Windows Server and IIS machine that was prepped and ready to go on there. So we kind of created that full kind of client to server experience. I mean, not unlike what you see in Visual Studio today, where you would start a new ASP.NET project, you write all your code and customize it and make it all pretty, and then you one-click publish that to, say, Azure, right? And these days there was no Azure. Well, there was, but there wasn't like the Azure you know today. You would publish this to an IIS machine, and then it start up your Windows host and then your IIS host, and then run your apps in there. So yeah, that's the stuff we worked on back in those days. Very interesting. A lot of that's technology I think is still around in some ways. So yeah.
And you worked as a senior marketing manager.
During those days, yes, that's what I was working on. I was in the marketing org and doing, marketing stuff, but primarily focusing on the community, open source community engagement, evangelism, that sort of stuff. So I spent a lot of time traveling on the road, going to conferences, meeting and engaging with people in the open source community and influencers to learn about their needs and understand, hey, how can we make Windows and IIS a better web host platform for things like a WordPress or PHP or whatever it is, whatever community they came out of.
And how was your experience with Microsoft?
It's been great. Look, I've been here over 20 years. It's 20 years in July. But I haven't been here 20 years straight. Like after my time in services, I ended up leaving for a few months. I just kind of needed a break from doing consulting and services and stuff. I also I relocated from the Southern California area up to Seattle when Microsoft hired me, and I didn't really like the winters up there very much. I still don't. In fact, I just recently relocated back to Southern California because I can now. But I took a break for about 3-4 months. I've been back in about 2003, and then I took another break for about a year after I finished my stint in marketing. I loved my time in marketing. I learned a ton about what it's like to do kind of big go-to-markets and campaigns. I learned a lot about evangelism and community engagement through that nearly 10 years I spent doing marketing there. The nice thing is that I got to do stuff I loved. Like I loved writing code. I got to write code still, even when I was working as like a marketing person, because I got to create like demos and samples and work with customers. For me, what's always been important to me is, even when I was in marketing, is that I always felt like that customer empathy is super important. If you're going to market a product, a service, anything to somebody, understanding that customer like deeply, like, is super important. Like, how do you market or talk about a thing unless you understand your customer at a deep level, right? And so being that customer and experiencing their pain for me was always important. And so being an actual user for the product or service that I was doing marketing for, to me, was always a critical piece of the success that I enjoyed there. Do I think it's necessary that everybody marketing some piece of software needs to be a software developer? Probably not. I mean, there are a lot of specialized functions among marketing that don't require that. But for me personally, it was important, having been a developer and an engineer, that if I was going to market some product or service to a developer engineer, that I understand them and that I could empathize with them. I think it made me better at what I did, for sure. And it applies today for what I do in a product management sense. For the product I work on, our customers are developers, right? So if I want to understand them, or if I want to have that customer empathy, being able to walk a mile in their shoes is for me an important aspect of that. And a lot of the product managers we hire on the team tend to be developers because they've either been our customers or they just have that high customer empathy. They understand the space, they understand the challenges, they understand what our customers need, these developers. And so that's key. If you're going to gain that insight, is to be able to kind of understand their pain and be able to relate to them, and be able to translate that into features or capabilities that are going to solve those problems for them. So, yeah.
So you worked as a cloud and solutions architect. Is there anything that you cannot forget when you was in that position?
Yeah. So that was my the year I took off after I finished marketing. Is there anything I couldn't forget from doing that?
Yeah.
I can't forget all the money I made, I guess, doing that. That was a pretty interesting year. There is a huge shortage of people that are deep and qualified on Azure platform. It's less so maybe today. I think the ecosystem is quickly catching up, and people are recognizing, like, hey, there's a huge need for customers who want people that are very deep and knowledgeable on Azure as a cloud, and need someone who can understand the breadth of services so that they could go and help architect, design, and help build and deliver full solutions built on Azure as a cloud. There's a huge opportunity there, and it's true for, I mean, all clouds really. But for me, since I had been so focused on Azure as a platform and as a service, that's of course where I put my attention and my focus. And yeah, it was great. To me, that year was important. I really was kind of growing kind of unhappy doing marketing. I felt like I was getting away from kind of my engineering roots. after having been in marketing for nearly 10 years. That was really for me about going back to what I loved, which was writing code. And that year gave me an opportunity to go and do that and reconnect and relearn some of the stuff I'd forgotten and learn new stuff that had come out that I just did not have the opportunity to go and do. And nothing provides kind of a better forcing function than to have a customer say, go build me something. I need this in like a month, right? And then you're like, oh no, I better go and learn something and then make that happen and then deliver that. Yeah, that was awesome to go and do that, and it helped me. I mean, it really did help me kind of reconnect back to the kind of my engineering roots, and I try to stay there today. It's really hard. I don't get to write as much code as I like. I am writing some right now, actually. I'm testing. Our AKS team has this new thing, or not new, but it's a thing called Azure Service Operators. And these are a way to be able to go and provision and manage services in Azure through the kind of the Kubernetes control, kube control. And so what I'm doing now is I provision a little AKS cluster, and I'm writing an ASO YAML file, and then trying to deploy it so I can deploy and manage Cosmos and have it connected to my Kubernetes cluster there. So that's kind of fun. I'm enjoying that. I'm having some problems making it work, but that's okay, right? That's what engineers do, is they solve problems, right? And take something that doesn't work and then figure out how to make it work. So I'm enjoying doing that. I'm hoping once I've got this figured out, I can write a blog post and show others what I did, and then they can go and take that and then go and provision some Kubernetes cluster and some nodes on there, and then provision Cosmos with it. Because at the end of the day, I want to help customers do that type of thing, and others and other things as well. So.
And you worked as a principal PM manager, Azure marketing, Azure networking, sorry.
Oh, no, I wasn't in marketing. I was on the product side. So when I came back to Microsoft, I rejoined over on the networking team. And over there, I did a few different things. I started off working on their control plane. So Azure networking has got a massive, it's a huge set of services. Like Azure networking is not one thing. It's a whole bunch of different services. There's virtual networking, there's gateways, there's ExpressRoute, there's CDN, there's all kinds of stuff. I know I'm missing a whole bunch. Each of those has their own management API. And so collectively, there is kind of a Uber kind of wrapper of those things. But I worked on the team as a PM for kind of that API layer. It's how I ended up doing it over on the Cosmos DB side, is because I had experience with this API. The management API stuff.
So you understood the connectivity between things inside the machine, and also you understood the connectivity between human beings. So you worked on two sides of technology. So how is this complete experience?
In terms of, you mean like the networking and the connectivity?
Both, in human networking and computer networking.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, after like 3 years in working on networking, I can say that I think networking is, it's an interesting space, but I'm not really a networking guy. I mean, I like it, and that it's important and critical, obviously, for building any kind of applications in the cloud, that you've got networking, right? Because without the network, you're basically kind of toast, right? So knowing how that works and the connectivity and how do you provide connectivity for applications and services that are running within a cloud or over the internet is super important. But it's not networking is not something where I'm super jazzed, I guess, about the technology itself. For me, it's one of the reasons why I went over to the Cosmos team was this was a space, like networking has been around for decades, right? It's kind of like a lot of things in computer science. Things like distributed NoSQL has not been around as long. And so this was a more nascent space. I find it more interesting. And it was more, networking is very focused on kind of your IT pro, your server administrators, that type of thing. That's not who I am, right? Like it goes back to who I am, which is I'm an engineer, I'm a coder, I'm a developer. I want to talk to people who are like me. And so that's what kind of drew me towards Cosmos and wanting to work on that service is their customers are basically like me, right? They're developers trying to build applications, distributed applications, which is another kind of thing that I kind of have always loved is, and that goes back to the 90s when I was building these message-based systems, is these were distributed applications, distributed systems. They ran in different data centers and talked to each other. Back then it was through messages. Now you have all kinds of stuff like, well, you have message-based, but you've got things like REST APIs or gRPC or all these other different formats to be able to talk to services or whatever. So it's a much different game these days. But it's still all distributed systems, and there's still a lot of things that still apply in terms of that.
So the person in you who is a consultant, the person in you a engineer, which one helped which one, and which one do you think made other thing very easier?
So ask that again.
Engineer or engineering or consultancy? Which one?
What do I feel like I'm more of, an engineer or a consultant?
Yeah, the consultant in you helped you in becoming a very good engineer, or the engineer in you helped you in becoming a good consultant. Both are coming from the same mind.
Yeah, I think the consultant in me made me a better engineer. But they kind of feed on each other in a way. Obviously, the better my engineering chops got, the more capable I was as a consultant because I could more quickly and easily solve customer problems. But that, again, I mean, being a good consultant means having high levels of customer empathy, right? Because you need to be able to relate ultimately to what the customer wants and needs. And in fact, that empathy, beyond just want, it's understanding their underlying needs. In some cases, customers don't know what they need. They know what they want, and sometimes those things don't align. But you need to be able to hear that and know that the thing that you're going to build them is the thing they actually need.
And also, Azure is increasing its market share year by year. So, what do you think that is working for it?
What's working for it?
Yeah, to make it improve itself.
I mean, there's lots of things. I think the breadth and depth of services that we're providing and building and offering, I think, is helping to drive that. I think just the whole cloud space itself is just growing as a whole. That's just large. It drives our growth. I mean, it's a combination of those things. It's the customers want and need a way to be able to build new applications, new services, right? So those greenfield applications, those cloud native applications. They also need a way to be able to migrate and modernize applications. This is another big driver of demand. Is I've got an application or a service that I've been running for years, maybe decades. I need a way to be able to modernize that and run that in a cloud environment because my business depends on it. That's another big driver for Azure, but it's a big driver for cloud in general.
So, what Microsoft is going to be after 5 or 10 years?
Where are we going to be in 5 or 10 years?
Yeah. What change that Microsoft is going to create in human?
What change is Microsoft going to create in 5 or 10 years? I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I kind of know from I mean, I have my dreams, I suppose, as to what I'd like to see in 5 or 10 years. I wouldn't consider myself a product visionary on the order of, say, a Satya or a Bill Gates or any of those others that can kind of look out across the horizon and see into the future in some meaningful, prescient way. From a distributed NoSQL perspective, which I do think about, I think that like today, these types of databases still have some rough edges on them, right? It's hard for users, particularly if you've never used this type of database. Like if all the thing you've ever known is like MySQL or Postgres or SQL Server, learning the concepts behind building a database or building on this type of database is challenging. There's a bit of a learning curve, and that's because it's just this type of database has not been around as long as, say, like relational databases. I mean, the relational database was born in 1970. So that's 50 years of computer scientists and engineers working and building and improving, and now you can building query engines and storage engines and all these things that make that highly efficient and able to do lots of different things. I mean, of course, it still has its limitations, which is why NoSQL databases and this type of scale-out database came to be. But for what it does a very good job. There's lots of things in this space that need to evolve and it just takes time. It takes time and effort on the part of computer scientists to go and build these things and provide that kind of richness and the ease of use that other databases would tend to enjoy. And so that's coming. There's also kind of a convergence in a way as well that I'm seeing with relational and NoSQL with the kind of the distributed SQL that's happening as well. That's kind of bringing those two worlds back together in a way where you've got a familiar experience using relational databases, but some of the benefits of having a scale-out distributed platform. So yeah, that's those will come together in a more meaningful way. I think, like with all things, you will continue to see democratization of technology, right? Like companies like Microsoft have existed for over 30 years to do that sort of thing, right? It's like the computer on every desktop vision that Bill Gates had decades ago. I mean, that's fundamentally what it is democratizing and making accessible things which were not accessible prior. And in Azure you see that, and in the cloud you see that by making things like compute accessible with a click of your mouse, or storage accessible the same way, or databases, or networking, or messaging services, or media services, or any of it. That's now all easily accessible, easily managed, configured, whatever you want. A decade ago that wasn't possible. You were buying physical servers, you were racking them, you were wiring them, you were putting power on them, you were doing it, platforming them, building images on them, all that stuff. It would take months and months and months and months and months to do the thing you can now do in minutes in the cloud. That is the type of thing we will continue to see, where increasingly things that are complex today become more approachable, more accessible in the future. And by virtue of that, more people being able to take advantage of it, which is good, because that means the whole space is growing. All of the cloud is growing because everybody that's in this space is working towards that same goal, is making this easier to use.
So at last, what do you say to the technologists who are watching and listening to our conversation from anywhere on this planet?
Keep doing what you're doing. I mean, those are the people that are working on making these things better and more accessible for others. We are all together in that same goal, that same objective, right? Is to make technology better, faster, easier, cheaper. Right? That's why we're all here, is to go and do that. It's what I do, and like I said before, to the extent that I can improve people's lives, that is to me a huge motivating factor. It's driven me literally my entire career, and motivates me today. And I think it motivates others to go and do this. There is just something really enjoyable about taking something that's a hard problem and then solving it and making that easier for others. You are paving the cow path, if you will, for others to make the journey for those following you easier to follow.
So I want your observation. I did masters in software engineering and graduation in bachelor's in computer science and engineering. So talking with experts like you who are already in the industry for a long time and have huge experience, listening to people like you and telling it to my audience through my medium. So what I'm going to learn and what I'm going to create if I work in a tech position as a software engineer.
What are you going to learn?
Yeah.
I mean, there's no limit really to what you can learn. That's kind of the beauty of this space. And in fact, it's almost a lament I hear from people sometimes is, hey, stuff keeps changing. Why? Why does it changes and changing too fast? Like I just learned this, now I've got to learn something else. Maybe it's some framework of something or some product or service that keeps changing its API and keeps evolving over time. It never stops, right? It will always evolve. It will always change. Change is just kind of the inevitability of what we do and where we exist in technology. But rather than lament it, people should embrace it. I mean, that's kind of the exciting thing, is that the technology keeps improving. It keeps getting better. Yeah, it changes. You have to continue to educate yourself and relearn and learn new things. But to me, that is not something to be sad about or to lament. It's something to be excited by. Right? We're in tech as technologists, we should be leading the way, right? And continuing to make that technology easier and more accessible for others. Someone has to do the hard work, and that's going to be us. But hopefully, that's why people are into it. It's definitely one of the reasons I enjoy it, is that it's always changing. There's if you think about like computing platforms, like in the old days, you had having to install an operating system on a physical piece of hardware, and then virtualization came around, and now you could install an OS on a slice of hardware, right, into a VM, into a container, or a virtual, not a container yet, but into this VM that was containerized, if you will. And then you had kind of containerization, and then you had a need to kind of orchestrate all of those things. So then you had things like Mesosphere, and now you've got things like Kubernetes. You have all of these different ways to be able to provide compute to users, and they're all different in a lot of ways, and all require new ways of learning new things. And it's gonna be confusing and complicated, and people are gonna rack their brains. But at the end of the day, that's how things advance, and you just kind of have to embrace it, really, and enjoy it. Otherwise, go do what I used to do, which is making hamburgers for people at a golf resort, right? That hasn't changed in ever. Still cook hamburgers the same way they've always been cooked, right? But if you like the change, embrace it. This is the place to be.
Awesome. So can I put this video on my YouTube channel with your permission?
Of course.
And also, can I put this audio and video clip on my podcast, website, internet, social media, everywhere with your permission?
Yeah, of course. Absolutely.
And have you seen any videos of mine on YouTube?
I did watch, I kind of checked out a few different ones you had on there. I didn't watch them all the way through, but I just clicked through a few of them in there and watched a few segments of videos you had in there. So nice series you're building there. I like it very much.
So thank you, Mark. Definitely your words and your experience in this conversation definitely impact and create some positive effect and helps improving my country, people who are in India or people who are in other country. Even if they take some of your points and if they implement in their life, definitely they will move forward and you will be the reason for their growth or smile.
Well, I hope so. I know that I've positively impacted others throughout my career who have I've had the privilege of knowing that I've impacted them because they've told me. But it's always my pleasure to be able to help inspire or just positively impact others, particularly in this space. It's something I'm definitely very passionate about. So thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you, sir. Keep going, keep doing what you love.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sai.
Yeah, bye.
Bye bye.